The gate began to open with a sound like thunder rolling across the colony. And every human and every Veth soldier heard it and understood that something fundamental had changed. General Varth was in the command center when the alarms started screaming, and he watched his display screens with disbelief as the massive doors that had imprisoned the colonists for 6 months swung outward into the dusty plains beyond. Impossible, he breathed. I ordered those systems locked down. The commands are not coming from the main control room. A technician reported with panic in his voice. Someone has accessed the secondary circuits through the power distribution network. Vorath roared with fury and swept everything off the nearest console with one savage motion of his arm. Find them and kill them, he ordered. And bring me the engineer because she is responsible for this. But even as his soldiers rushed to obey, another alarm joined the cacophony. The long-range sensors had detected multiple contacts entering the system at high speed. Sub-Commander Desik studied the readings and felt his blood run cold. General, he said quietly, we have incoming vessels. The inspection fleet, Vorath said. They are early. No, sir, Desik replied. These are not Dominion signatures. They are human military vessels. 3 frigates on an intercept course. For the first time since the occupation began, General Varth Kell experienced something very close to fear. The humans had heard the signal help was coming in the detention block. Una heard the commotion outside her cell and allowed herself to feel hope for the first time in months. The door burst open and 2 Veth soldiers dragged her out into the corridor, their grips bruising her arms as they rushed her toward the command center. General Varth was waiting for her, and his yellow eyes burned with a hatred that would have made most beings cower. What have you done? He demanded. Una looked at the display screens showing the approaching human ships and felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. I called for help, she said simply. And help answered. Varth grabbed her by the throat and lifted her off the ground with one hand, his claws pressing into her skin just short of drawing blood. I should kill you right now, he snarled. You could, Una said, her voice strained but steady. But it would not change anything, because those ships will reach us in approximately 4 hours and your occupation is finished. Desik stepped forward cautiously. General, we need to make a decision, because our forces are not equipped to repel a military assault while simultaneously maintaining control of the colony. Vorath held Una for a long moment, his grip tightening as if he could squeeze the defiance out of her through sheer physical force. Then he dropped her to the floor and turned away. Prepare for evacuation, he ordered, and the words seemed to cost him something vital. We will withdraw to the transport ships and regroup with the inspection fleet. General, one of his officers protested. We cannot simply abandon the colony. We are not abandoning anything, Vorath snapped. We are executing a tactical withdrawal to reassess the situation. Una picked herself up from the floor and rubbed her throat where his claws had left marks. You are running, she said, because you finally understand that you cannot win here. Vorath spun around to face her, and for a moment, Una thought he would kill her after all. This is not over, he said. The Dominion does not forget, and the Dominion does not forgive. And one day, we will return to finish what we started. Maybe, Una replied, but not today, and not without a fight that you did not expect. She met his gaze without fear. This human woman who had single-handedly dismantled his occupation through nothing more than careful planning and absolute determination. I have a question for you, she continued. Before you leave, Vorath waited, his expression unreadable. Why? Una asked. Why did you not just escape when you could have? Why risk your life for people who cannot defend themselves? Because the gate was not a way out, Una said. It was a door. And we decide who walks through it. She gestured toward the open gate visible through the command center windows. where colonists were beginning to gather in the daylight for the first time in months. "You thought you were imprisoning us," she said. "But you were really just keeping us together. And together we are stronger than you ever imagined." Gorath stared at her for a long moment, and something shifted behind his yellow eyes. Not respect exactly, but perhaps recognition of an enemy who had proven worthy of his attention. "You are dangerous," he said finally. "More dangerous than your soft exterior would suggest. All humans are dangerous," Yuna replied, "when you give us no other choice." The evacuation proceeded quickly as Dominion soldiers piled into their transport ships under the watchful eyes of the colonists they had oppressed for half a year. Desik paused at the boarding ramp and looked back at the colony one final time. He found Yuna standing at the edge of the crowd, watching the departure with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "For what it is worth," Desik called out to her, "I believe you did something remarkable today." Yuna nodded in acknowledgement, but said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The Dominion ships lifted off just as the human frigates entered orbit, and the two forces passed each other in the void without exchanging fire. It was not a victory in the traditional sense, not a battle won through superior firepower or military strategy. It was something different, a statement, a declaration, a message sent to every power in the galaxy that humanity would not be conquered quietly. Daeyoung found Yuna at the open gate as the first human relief ship descended through the atmosphere, its running lights blazing against the darkening sky. "You did it," he said, still barely able to believe what had happened. "We did it," Yuna corrected. "All of us together." She watched the ship land and felt the weight of 6 months of fear and planning finally lift from her shoulders. The gate stood open behind her, no longer a prison, but a threshold between the darkness of occupation and the light of freedom. Su-min approached with tears streaming down her face. "What happens now?" she asked. Yuna thought about General Warth and his promise that the Dominion would return, and she knew that this was only the beginning of a much longer struggle. But that struggle would wait for another day. "Now we rebuild," she said, "and we make sure that the galaxy knows what happened here, because other colonies will face the same choice we faced, and they need to know that resistance is possible." She turned to face her people, the colonists who had trusted her plan and risked everything on her engineering genius and her stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "The Dominion thought we were weak," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "They thought we would break and submit and accept our fate. But they did not understand us at all." She pointed at the open gate, at the human ships in the sky, at the future that they had fought so hard to reclaim. "We are humans," she said, "and we do not surrender, we do not give up, and we do not go quietly into the darkness." The crowd erupted in cheers that echoed across the colony and out into the vast emptiness of space. Yuna smiled and allowed herself a moment of pure joy. The gate had been their prison, their symbol of oppression, and their constant reminder that escape was impossible. Now it stood open to the stars, and humanity had taken its first step toward a future where no one would ever underestimate them again. The Dominion had learned a lesson that would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. When you push humans to the breaking point, they do not break. They push back. The detention cell was cold and dark, but Yuna had expected nothing less from her captors. She sat on the bare metal bench and counted the seconds in her head, tracking the passage of time while her mind raced through every possible outcome of the situation. She had created General Varth would interrogate her eventually, and she needed to decide how much to reveal and how much to keep hidden. The signal had been sent, but the gate itself remained sealed because Yuna had not completed the final sequence before the soldiers arrived. That was the one piece of information she could not allow the Dominion to extract from her, because the resistance was still out there and they still had a chance to finish. What she had started, Dae-young had the backup codes. She had given them to him 3 days ago, along with detailed instructions for activating the gate's opening sequence. And she had made him promise to complete the mission, no matter what happened to her. The cell door opened and General Varath entered alone, his massive form filling the doorway like a shadow given physical shape. He stood there for a long moment, studying her with those cold yellow eyes that had witnessed the conquest of 100 worlds. "You fascinate me," he said finally. "I have broken the spirits of species far stronger than yours. Yet here you sit with no fear in your eyes." "Fear is a waste of energy," Yuna replied. "And I have more important things to think about." Varath moved closer, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor with each deliberate step. "Your signal was clever," he admitted, "but ultimately pointless. Because even if human ships receive your message, they cannot arrive in time to save you or your people." "Perhaps," Yuna said. "Or perhaps you're wrong about human capabilities, just as you have been wrong about everything else." A flash of anger crossed Varath's face, quickly suppressed, but not quickly enough. "I could have you executed right now," he said, slowly and painfully, "as an example to any other humans who might consider defying the Dominion." "You could," Yuna agreed. "But you will not, because you still do not understand how I did what I did. And that uncertainty is eating at you like poison." Varath's lips pulled back from his teeth in what might have been a smile or might have been a snarl. "You are perceptive for a human. I am an engineer," Yuna said. "We are trained to observe and analyze and find the truth hidden beneath the surface of things." Varath crouched down until his face was level with hers, and Yuna could smell the alien scent of his breath like copper and ozone. "Tell me what I want to know," he said, "and I will make your death quick and painless. But if you force me to extract the information through other means, you will beg for oblivion long before I grant it." Yuna met his gaze without flinching. "You want to know how I bypassed your security," she said. "And the answer is simple. I designed this colony, every system and every safeguard. And you cannot truly control something you did not create. That tells me nothing useful." "It tells you everything you need to know," Yuna replied. "But you are too arrogant to understand the lesson." Varath rose to his full height and loomed over her like a mountain of scales and muscle. "We shall see how long your defiance lasts," he said. And then he left the cell without another word. Yuna let out a slow breath and allowed herself a moment of relief. She had bought time, but she did not know how much. In the hidden basement beneath the medical storage facility, Dae-young gathered the remaining members of the resistance and explained the situation in hushed tones. "Yuna has been captured, but the mission is not over," he said. "She gave us everything we need to finish what she started." Su-min looked frightened but determined. "What do we do?" Dae-young held up the data chip containing the backup codes. "We opened the gate, but the Dominion has increased security everywhere," another resistance member protested. "We will never get close to the control room." "We do not need to reach the control room," Dae-young said. "Yuna showed me another way. A secondary access point that connects directly to the gate mechanism through the power distribution network." He explained the plan that Yuna had prepared for exactly this contingency. A backup route that would allow them to complete the sequence from a maintenance junction near the colony's main power core. It was dangerous, and the timing would have to be perfect. But it was possible. "We move in 6 hours, Dae-young said. "Spread the word to everyone we trust and tell them to be ready for anything." Back in the detention block, General Varath had called a meeting of his senior officers to discuss the security breach sub-commander. Desek presented his analysis with obvious concern. "The human engineer exploited vulnerabilities that we did not know existed," he said. "I believe there may be other hidden systems throughout the colony that she designed specifically for this purpose." "Then find them," Varath snapped. "We are trying." Desik replied. But she built this colony from the ground up, and our engineers do not fully understand her design methodology. Vorath slammed his fist against the conference table, hard enough to dent the metal surface. How can one human cause so much trouble for the entire Dominion occupation force? Desik hesitated before answering, General. I have been studying the human species since we arrived on this world, and I believe we may have underestimated them in fundamental ways. Explain. They are physically weaker than us, and their technology is less advanced, Desik said. But they compensate with creativity and determination that borders on the irrational. And this engineer, Unibeak, is a perfect example of that trait. Vorath considered this for a long moment. You admire her, he said. And it was not quite an accusation. I respect her, Desik corrected. There is a difference, and I think we would be wise to take her and her species more seriously. The Dominion does not take inferior species seriously, Vorath replied. We conquer them, and we use them, and we discard them when they are no longer useful. Perhaps that approach has worked in the past, Desik said carefully. But these humans are different, and I fear that we have awakened something in them that will not easily go back to sleep. Vorath dismissed the warning with a wave of his hand. But somewhere deep in his mind, a seed of doubt had been planted 6 hours later. De Jong and 3 other resistance members made their way through the maintenance tunnels toward the power distribution junction. They moved in silence, communicating through hand signals that Yuna had taught them. And they reached their destination without encountering a single Dominion patrol. The junction was exactly as Yuna had described, a cramped space filled with humming machinery and blinking lights. With a hidden access panel that connected to the gate's secondary control circuit, De Jong inserted the data chip and began entering the sequence that Yuna had programmed above them. In the detention block, Yuna felt a subtle vibration in the floor and knew that her people were completing the mission. She smiled in the darkness of her cell, General. Vorath was about to learn what happened when you pushed humans too far. The gate was about to open, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The first phase of the operation began at exactly 3 in the morning, when the Dominion patrols were at their thinnest and the colony's automated systems were running their nightly maintenance cycles. Yuna had chosen this timing deliberately, because she knew from 6 months of careful observation that the Veth soldiers grew complacent during the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. Su-Min triggered a small electrical fire in the agricultural sector. Nothing dangerous, but dramatic enough to require immediate attention from the nearest patrol unit. At the same moment, Daeum caused a pressure fluctuation in the water recycling plant that set off alarms throughout the industrial quarter. 3 more accidents occurred in rapid succession across different parts of the colony, each one carefully designed to seem random and unconnected while drawing Dominion forces away from the Gate Sector Sub-Commander. Desik watched the incident report scroll across his display and felt a cold knot of suspicion forming in his stomach. This is not coincidence, he said to the communications officer. Get me General Vorath immediately. But General Vorath was already awake and already furious. He had been pulled from his quarters by the commotion, and he stood in the command center watching his carefully controlled colony descend into chaos. Find the cause of these disruptions, he snarled at his officers, and bring me whoever is responsible. Desik approached cautiously. General, I believe this may be a coordinated attack designed to draw our forces away from a specific target. What target? Vorath demanded. I do not know yet, Desik admitted. But I recommend we increase security at all critical systems, including the main gate. Vorath considered this for a moment before nodding sharply. Do it. And bring me the human engineer, Unibeak. Because if anyone knows what is happening in this colony, it will be her. But when the soldiers arrived at Yuna's quarters, They found only an empty room and a bed that had not been slept in. Yuna was already deep inside the maintenance tunnels, moving through the hidden pathways she had designed years ago for exactly this purpose. She could hear the muffled sounds of alarms and running feet above her, and she allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction at how perfectly the diversion was working. The gate control room was located at the heart of the colony's infrastructure, protected by multiple layers of security that the Dominion had considered unbreachable. 3 Veth soldiers stood guard inside the room, their weapons ready and their attention focused on the door. They never considered that the real threat might come from below. Yuna reached the access panel she had installed during the colony's construction, a maintenance hatch hidden behind a decorative wall panel that appeared on no official blueprints. She had told no one about this entrance, not even Dae-young, because some secrets needed to remain secret until the moment they were needed. She entered her override code and felt the panel slide silently open. The environmental control interface was exactly where she had left it, connected to the ventilation system that served the gate control room. Yuna worked quickly, rerouting the air supply and introducing a carefully measured dose of sedative gas that she had synthesized from medical supplies over the past 3 months. The Veth soldiers were unconscious within 90 seconds, slumping to the floor without ever understanding what had happened. Yuna climbed through the access hatch and stepped into the control room, her heart pounding, but her hands perfectly steady. She had dreamed of this moment for 6 months, and now that it was finally here, she felt strangely calm. The gate controls were more complex than she remembered, modified by Dominion engineers who had tried to improve her original design without really understanding how it worked. Fortunately, Yuna understood every circuit and every connection, and she began the process of unlocking the systems that would change everything. Back in the command center, General Vorath received the report that Unibeak had disappeared and felt something he had not experienced in decades of military conquest: genuine uncertainty. "She is the key to this," he said, more to himself than to his officers. "Find her now." Desik organized search teams while Vorath tried to anticipate what the human engineer might be planning. The gate was the obvious target, but what could one human hope to accomplish? Even if she reached the control room, the Dominion had sealed the gate with military-grade encryption that would take years to crack without the proper codes. What Vorath did not know was that Yuna did not need to crack the encryption. She had written it. The original security protocols had been designed by Yuna herself, and she had included a hidden backdoor that she had never documented or shared with anyone. It was a violation of standard engineering practice, a secret vulnerability that could have cost her career if it had ever been discovered. But Yuna had learned long ago that sometimes the rules needed to be broken, and now that paranoid precaution was about to save her entire colony. She entered the backdoor code and watched as the gate's security systems began to unlock one by one. "General," a panicked voice called over the communication system, "We have detected unauthorized access to the gate controls." Vorath's blood ran cold. "Lock it down," he ordered. "Lock everything down now." But it was too late. Yuna had already reached the point of no return, and the gate systems were responding to her commands as if the Dominion occupation had never happened. She activated the emergency broadcast array hidden within the gate mechanism and began transmitting on every frequency that human military vessels were known to monitor. "This is Unibeak of Kepler 442b Colony," she said into the transmitter. "We are under Dominion occupation and requesting immediate assistance. Our coordinates are being transmitted with this message. Please respond." The signal shot out into space at the speed of light, spreading across the void like ripples from a stone thrown into an infinite ocean. Yuna did not know if anyone would hear her message. or if help would arrive in time. But she had done what she set out to do. The colony was no longer silent, General. Vorath arrived at the gate control room with a full squad of soldiers and found Yuna standing calmly at the main console, her hands still resting on the controls. "Step away from that console," he commanded. Raising his weapon, Yuna turned to face him, and there was no fear in her eyes. "It is already done," she said. "The signal has been sent and you cannot stop it." Vorath's finger tightened on the trigger. But something made him hesitate. "Why?" he demanded. "Why would you throw away your life for these pathetic people who cannot even defend themselves?" Yuna smiled. And it was the smile of someone who had already won even if she died in the next moment. "Because they are my people," she said. "And because you made a mistake that every conqueror makes eventually." "What mistake?" "You underestimated us," Vorath gestured to his soldiers, who moved forward to seize Yuna and drag her away from the console as they locked restraints around her wrists. Yuna caught Desik's eye and saw something unexpected there. "Respect. Take her to the detention block," Vorath ordered. "And increase security on all systems immediately. Because I want to know exactly how she did this and whether anyone else was involved." Yuna went quietly, offering no resistance as the soldiers escorted her through the corridors of the colony she had built with her own hands. She had done her part. Now everything depended on whether anyone out there was listening. The plan was simple in theory, but dangerous in practice. And Yuna spent every spare moment refining the details until she could execute them blindfolded. She gathered the resistance cell in the hidden basement, beneath the old medical storage facility, where the Dominion surveillance systems had never been properly installed due to what Yuna had reported as structural interference. There was no structural interference, just clever engineering designed years ago for a purpose Yuna had hoped she would never need. "The gate is not just a door," she explained to the dozen colonists who had risked everything to be here tonight. "It is the heart of the colony's entire infrastructure." She activated a holographic display that showed the complex web of systems connected to the main gate. Lines of light spreading out like blood vessels through the body of the colony power grid. Life support, communications, and most importantly, the emergency broadcast system that the Dominion thinks they disabled. "They did disable it," Dae-Young said with confusion. "I watched them destroy the transmitter array myself. They destroyed the primary array," Yuna replied with a small smile. "But I built a secondary system into the gate mechanism itself, hidden in the power conduits where no one would think to look." The colonists exchanged glances of amazement and dawning hope. Yuna had never told anyone about the backup systems she had designed into the colony's infrastructure, because she had learned long ago that secrets were only safe when no one knew they existed. "When we open the gate," she continued, "we will not just be creating an escape route. We will be sending a signal to every human ship and station within range of our transmitter." "How far is that range?" asked a young woman named Su Min, who worked in the agricultural sector. "Far enough," Yuna said. "Far enough to reach the patrol routes that human military vessels use to monitor this sector of space." The plan required precise timing and coordination across multiple teams working simultaneously in different parts of the colony. Yuna assigned each person a specific task based on their skills and access, and she drilled them repeatedly until everyone could perform their role without hesitation. Meanwhile, General Vorath had grown increasingly irritated by the strange calm that had settled over the human population. He summoned Yuna to his command center one afternoon, and she walked through the corridors of her own colony as if she were a stranger visiting for the first time. The command center had been the colony's administrative hub before the occupation, a place where Yuna had spent countless hours designing improvements and solving problems. Now it was filled with Veth soldiers and alien technology. And General Vorath sat in the chair that had once belonged to the colony's human administrator. "You are the engineer who designed this facility," Vorath said. Studying her with his cold yellow eyes. I am, Yuna replied, keeping her voice flat and her expression neutral. Impressive work for such a primitive species, Vorath commented. And Yuna could not tell if he meant it as a compliment or an insult. The systems are efficient and well integrated. Thank you, Vorath leaned forward. And Yuna felt the weight of his attention like a physical pressure against her skin. I have been watching you, he said. And you are different from the other humans, calmer, more controlled. And I find myself wondering what goes on behind those quiet eyes of yours. I am an engineer, Yuna said simply. I solve problems, and I build things, and I do not waste energy on matters I cannot control. A practical philosophy, Vorath said, and one that could serve you well in the new order. Because the Dominion always has need of skilled workers who understand their place in the hierarchy. He made her an offer then. A position of privilege and authority over her fellow humans in exchange. For her complete loyalty to the Dominion, Yuna pretended to consider the offer while her heart pounded against her ribs like a caged animal trying to break free. I am honored by your offer, she said finally, but I must decline. Because my loyalty is to my work, and my work is here among my own people. Vorath's eyes narrowed. And for a moment, Yuna thought she had made a fatal mistake. You refuse, he said. And there was genuine surprise in his voice. No one refuses the Dominion. I am not refusing the Dominion, Yuna said carefully. I am simply choosing to serve in my own way, maintaining the systems that keep this colony running and producing the minerals that your empire requires. It was a dangerous game, walking the line between defiance and submission. But Yuna had been playing dangerous games her entire life. Vorath studied her for a long moment before leaning back in his chair. You are either very brave or very foolish, he said. And I have not yet decided which. Perhaps both, Yuna replied. And something that might have been amusement flickered across the general's scaled face. He dismissed her with a wave of his clawed hand. And Yuna walked out of the command center with her head held high and her plans unchanged. That night, she received word that one of the resistance members had been captured. During a routine patrol sweep, the young man's name was Junho, and he had been carrying coded messages that could expose the entire network. If the Dominion managed to decrypt them, Yuna made a decision that would have seemed reckless to anyone who did not understand the stakes. We accelerate the timeline, she told De Jong in the hidden basement. The inspection fleet arrives in 12 days, but we move in 3 days, De Jong exclaimed. That is not enough time to prepare. It will have to be enough, Yuna said. Because if they break Junho and learn what we are planning, we will all be executed before the week is out. She spent the next 72 hours, sleeping in 2-hour intervals and working every other moment, adjusting systems and preparing contingencies, and sending coded messages through the maintenance channels she had built into the colony's ventilation rhythms. Sub-Commander Thesek reported to General Vorath that the humans seemed more active than usual, moving through the corridors with purpose and urgency that had been absent for months. I told you they were planning something, Thesek said. Let them plan, Vorath replied with contempt. Whatever scheme these soft creatures have devised will crumble the moment they face real opposition. And then I will have the excuse I need to make a proper example of them. He had no idea how wrong he was. Yuna stood in the maintenance tunnel beneath the gate control room and checked her equipment one final time. In exactly 18 hours, the occupation of Kepler 442b would end one way or another. She thought of her parents and the lessons they had taught her about survival and dignity. She thought of the 3 colonists who had been executed in the plaza, and the countless others who had suffered under Dominion rule. She thought of Junho, who was probably being tortured at this very moment, but who would not break because humans were stronger than the Dominion could ever. Understand? Then she stopped thinking and started working. Because there was no more time for doubt or fear or anything except the cold precision of an engineer with a job to do. The gate had been their prison for 6 months. Tomorrow, it would become their salvation. The mining colony of Kepler 442b had been under Veth Dominion control for exactly 6 months when Una Beek decided she had seen enough suffering. She stood at the edge of the central plaza, watching General Vorath Kell address the gathered colonists from his elevated platform. And she felt something cold settle in her chest, like a stone dropped into still water. The general was tall even by Veth standards. Nearly 8 feet of scaled muscle and cruel intelligence. And his voice carried across the plaza without any need for amplification. "You have been given the honor of serving the Dominion," Vorath announced, his yellow eyes sweeping over the crowd of frightened humans. "And yet some among you still cling to foolish dreams of resistance." Una kept her face perfectly blank as 2 Veth soldiers dragged 3 colonists onto the platform. And she recognized all of them as people she had worked with, people who had families, people who had only wanted to live free. These criminals were caught attempting to send a signal to human space. Vorath continued, and there was something almost like pleasure in his voice. "And they will serve as an example to any who would defy the Dominion." The executions were quick and brutal, and Una forced herself to watch every second, because she owed these people that much, at least. When it was over, and the crowd began to disperse under the watchful eyes of Veth patrols, Una walked back toward the engineering sector with her hands steady and her heart burning with a fire she had kept hidden for 6 long months. She had designed this colony from the ground up. Every corridor and every system, including the massive defensive gate that the Dominion had sealed shut on the day they arrived. The gate was supposed to protect the colonists from external threats. But now it served as their prison, a constant reminder that there was no escape from Veth rule. Una knew things about that gate that the Dominion could never imagine. Secrets built into the very foundation of the colony's infrastructure. And she had been waiting for the right moment to use them. That moment had finally arrived. She found Dae-young Park waiting for her in the maintenance tunnel beneath the water recycling plant. His face drawn with grief and anger after witnessing the executions. 3 more dead, he said quietly. And for what? Because they tried to call for help that will never come. Help will come, Una replied. And something in her voice made Dae-young look up sharply. But only if we make it come. Dae-young had been leading a small resistance cell since the 3rd month of occupation, gathering information and waiting for an opportunity that seemed like it would never arrive. "What are you talking about?" he asked Una, pulled a small data chip from her pocket and held it up between her fingers. "I designed this colony," she said. "Every system, every failsafe, every override code. And the Dominion thinks they control everything, but they only control what I let them control. The gate." Dae-young breathed, understanding dawning in his eyes. "The gate," Una confirmed. "But not just the gate, because the gate is connected to the power grid, the life support systems, and most importantly, the emergency broadcast array." She explained her plan in careful detail while Dae-young listened with growing amazement. The colonists could not simply escape through the gate, because the Dominion would hunt them down before they got 10 kilometers from the colony walls instead. Una proposed something far more ambitious. They would turn the gate into both a weapon and a beacon, sending a signal that would reach human military channels while simultaneously crippling the Dominion's control over the colony. "This is insane," Dae-young said when she finished. But there was hope in his voice for the first time in months. "And it might actually work. It will work," Una said. "But we need to move carefully because General Vorath is not stupid, and he will notice if we act too quickly." Over the following days, Una continued her forced labor, maintaining the colony's systems while secretly meeting with the resistance cell during her rest periods. She taught them the layout of the colony's infrastructure, showed them which access points were unmonitored, and began preparing the first phase of her plan. The work was dangerous and exhausting, but Una felt more alive than she had since the day the Dominion ships had appeared in the sky above their world. General Varth, meanwhile, had begun to notice something strange about the human colonists. They were too quiet, too compliant, and there was a look in their eyes that he could not quite identify. They are planning something, Sub-Commander Desic reported during their evening briefing. I can feel it. What can they possibly plan? Varth replied dismissively. They are soft creatures with short lives and no military capability whatsoever. Perhaps, Desic said. But they surrendered very quickly when we arrived, and they have caused no trouble since. And that seems wrong to me. Varth considered this for a moment before waving his clawed hand in dismissal. Increase the patrols if it makes you feel better, he said. But do not waste my time with concerns about these pathetic humans. Desic bowed and left, unconvinced but unwilling to argue with his general. Una learned of the increased patrols through her network of resistance contacts, and she adjusted her plans accordingly. She had spent years designing systems that could be maintained and modified without detection, and now that foresight was paying off in ways she had never anticipated. Late one night, as she worked alone in a maintenance shaft near the gate control systems, Una paused to look at her hands. They were rough and calloused from months of forced labor, but they were steady and strong and capable of building things that would outlast any empire. She thought of her parents back on Earth, who had fought every day of their lives for scraps of dignity and moments of peace. They had taught her that the universe did not give anything freely, that everything worth having had to be earned through sweat and sacrifice and stubborn refusal to give up. The Dominion thought they had conquered this colony, but they had only occupied it temporarily. Una was going to show them the difference. She returned to her quarters just before dawn, her mind already racing ahead to the next phase of the plan in 3 weeks. A Dominion inspection fleet would arrive to evaluate the colony's mineral output and decide whether to continue the occupation or strip the settlement for parts and ship the surviving humans to labor camps scattered across the galaxy. 3 weeks was not much time, but it was enough. Una lay on her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, and for the first time in 6 months, she smiled. The gate that imprisoned her people would soon become the instrument of their liberation, and General Varth Kell would learn a lesson that the Dominion had never been taught before. Humans did not break the way other species did. They bent and they waited and they planned. And when the moment was right, they struck with a fury that no one ever saw coming. The occupation of Kepler 442b was about to end, and Unibeak was going to make sure that the entire galaxy heard about it.